I'm a feminist, but I do really like to be glamorous, like a lot. Like if I go out and I don't feel in some way glamorous, like it doesn't have to always be full Elizabeth Taylor, but I prefer that it is. So I've been writing this play and rehearsing this play, and it's been so intense and so round the clock, and sometimes you rehearse all day and then you have to rewrite all night, and it's just, you're exhausted. And I knew that I was coming into the rehearsal room, like with no makeup and my hair everywhere. And I said to the actresses in the play, Susan McComber and Alexandra Roach, one day, I just said, God, I've really looked terrible this last few weeks. And they said, no, you look like a playwright. They genuinely said that. And do you know what? At first I was like, oh, God, I look like a playwright. But do you know what? Almost immediately, I thought, I don't even care. I thought, fuck yeah, I'm a playwright. I'm Neil Simon. I'm Harold Pinter. They didn't have to care about their fucking hair and their liquid eyeliner, and now neither do I. And I have found it very liberating. And do you know what? I am much less vain as a playwright than I am as a comedian.
Yes.
Because they had photographers come in one day, and they tell you ahead of time because they take pictures of the rehearsal room for the programme. You know, when you see the programme and inside there's a picture of, you know, Ralph Fiennes in jeans or something, but doing the Chekhov you're currently watching. Mm-hmm. And because they've got to have something to put in the programme, basically, and their costumes aren't ready. And so,
that's an amazing production of, like, the Seagull, just all denim.
Double denim Chekhov is my favourite kind.
The Canadian tux.
Exactly. And so I was in some of the photos because they take photos of, you know, the playwright, the director and stuff. And I forgot the photographer was coming, which I would never do as a comedian. I didn't have any makeup on. My hair had not been washed in a while. And my hair is the kind of hair that you can not wash it for a while. And it's fine. It just gets sort of, I don't know, it just gets a sort of rough and ready quality to it. And I would normally be like, oh my God, I forgot that. I wouldn't forget the photographer was coming. I didn't give a fuck. I was just like, well, I'm the playwright. I'm meant to look a bit like this. Surely I'm meant to have pencils sticking out of my hair, ruffle it up a bit, make it look worse, if anything. And I just loved it. And I saw the pictures in the programme and I was like, yeah, I look like I'm at work.
Yeah.
Fucking loved it. So this is I think, might be my first I'm a feminist and in 7.5 years.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah. It's about time.
I looked like a man at work. And I was like, I'm allowed to be that now.
Yes, it's about your work.
That's right.
Yeah, no, give the full round of applause for that. That is a milestone.
I mean, tonight I'm on stage, so I'm in Coco Fennell and I've had a blow dry. But listen, we morph for the job.
Now, I've not written as many plays, so I'm a feminist, but I continue to be embarrassed that no matter what I do, my nipples poke through every single outfit that I wear, and I realize you're all staring at them now. Hello. I've spent hundreds, almost thousands on bras, t-shirt bras, padded bras. Does not matter. Always ba-bam, double barrels, because, I don't know, I'm either posh or American with guns. I don't know why. And the thing is, I don't want people to think I'm cold. I'm never cold. I am always hot and sweaty and ready to take off 3 layers of skin, but these things will not be covered by man nor beast nor any manner of fabric, and I don't know what to do about it.
See, I think it's a good look.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Looks like I'm attentive and ready to go.
Jennifer Aniston in Friends, go back.
Yes.
Episode after episode after episode, were those nipples stuck on? Did she just have such pert breasts that she didn't need a bra? There are so many questions.
Yeah. And I'm not even like, oh, this is nerves or whatever. You'll know because I'll start sweating before I talk in a couple of minutes. This is just today. This is every day now. Is this a 40s thing, or is this hormones? Is this me? It's me. It's fucking me. It's me.
Is it new?
No, I mean it would be like in the past 5-6 years, like
what, your nipples are just suddenly evident.
Yeah, well, look, when I was a teenager, they were like not even there. They were facing the wrong way. They were stuck in the past. They were thinking about, oh shit. And then, you know, I got my 20s and 30s. It was like, okay, this is normal. And now it's like, literally, I'm about to be on camera and they're like shoving those little pedal things down and they're doubling the pedals up. And I'm like, do I need to just put duct tape on? Like, what's happening? Why am I so aroused by life? I don't, you know, I've never been that high on life, but I guess my boobs are on it. They are all over it.
Sounds like you could put someone's eye out with one of them.
I mean, and if there's an evildoer out there, I hope we run into each other on narrow street. I would like for these to do some good. Maybe they'll finally rest. Now you'll see every single TV show like, bam, gotcha. Where's Wally? They're there. You know what I mean?
It didn't do Jennifer Aniston any harm.
No, it didn't.
It's gone on to do quite well.
Amazing things.
Do you have names for them?
Stuff and things. I haven't come, literally.
What, the left one is called stuff and the right one's called things?
Stuff is right, and things.
Wow. Does anyone else have names for their breasts? They're lying, they do.
Yeah, there are a couple little I don't want to tell you, but I definitely do.
Anyone want to share? Yes, you do?
So, as a woman with large breasts, they get spoken to, addressed a lot by men.
People just talk to your breasts. Ignore the face, just the boobs.
Just talk to my boobs. Wow. And so I would slap each one individually and say, wake up, Margaret, wake up, Deborah, someone's speaking to you.
Wow.
Sorry. Was one of your breasts called Deborah?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I mean, those are two sound names.
No, I had a good friend in school back in New Zealand. So, and we were bosom buddies.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, listen, if anyone would like to name their breasts Deborah and Frances, I wouldn't be mad about it.
I mean, also, can you get her on the next panel? Because I can't wait to hear all the stories.
I feel there's more stories to Wake up, Margaret. Wake up, Deborah. Someone's talking to you.
Yes. I mean,
so good.
They have such sound professional names, but also love sleeping in, which I appreciate, hats off to the both of them.
Professional names. It's true. It's true. They're not diminutive. I'm a feminist, but I prefer women who give my play good reviews to women who don't. And some of those women have been men.
I'm a feminist, or this might be an and. I have no troubles when people mistake me for someone who is pregnant, usually when I'm wearing a coat, because they don't understand that I can have a fat body and such a pretty face at the same time without it being a pregnant one. So I take every single seat I'm given. I take every single opportunity to use the employee bathroom that they give me. I make up full stories about when they're due, what their gender might be, just to keep it going, because I like getting stuff just gratis. If you don't understand fat people, then get some more fat friends and understand that I don't really need that seat, but I'm going to play all the sympathy I can get out of this.
Do you wear a baby on board badge?
No, I haven't, but sometimes I'm tired and I will just thrust it out. I will just rub it. And it's like, is she pregnant or is she hungry? I don't know. Give me a seat and I'll tell you. Oh, man, I like sitting down.
I'm a feminist, but I have just in my head secretly named my breasts Margaret and Atwood.
Wonderful.
I think that just felt right for me. I heard Margaret, and I thought, that's something about Margaret sounds right. Obviously, I can't name one of my breasts Deborah. That would be demented. I can't call my breast after myself, like Deborah Jr.
That would be amazing. It's Margaret and Deb Jr.
No,
Little Deb.
But I liked Margaret, and in homage to you... Sorry, what's your name? Bob.
Beautiful. Yes, of course. Another sound name. I'm going to name one Barb.
Yeah, I was going to say, we should reciprocate.
Trish,
really.
Barb. Done.
I should really return the compliment, because you've got one that's called Deborah, but Margaret and Atwood seemed right to me. And I feel more feminist because my breasts are named after her. If your breasts aren't named after a major feminist who's influenced the movement in some significant way, think again.
Wow. What if your favorite feminist is like Cher or something? You know what I mean? What if you have a one-named feminist?
Well, then it has to be Cher and Beyonce.
Okay, fine. All right, you get two of them. Okay. I am a feminist, but despite being someone who is personally not a waxer, not somebody who in her 44 years of life has ever volunteered to have a stranger finger her while whipping all of her personal adult hair off of her body, I was visiting home, and there was a place around the corner from where I was staying called Pretty Kitty, and I considered going into it every single day because clearly I have a stronger adherence to capitalism and being a good consumer than I do to my own personal morals about my own body and what I like to do with it. I was just like, maybe I should go in there. It looks really clean. There's a woman with a hijab working at the front desk. We could be friends. I wonder if she'll rip all of my butthole hair off. This could be fantastic. And I really, really considered it. Not that you can't do different things with your body, not that you can't make a different choice, but I just know that I'm going to be weird and itchy and scratchy. Why would I do that just because of good advertising?
What's the name of the waxing salon? Pretty Kitty?
It was Pretty Kitty! And the cat thing, I think, also played.
You understand why it was called that, right?
Because it's some weird subliminal message that's been pumped out to me in between films I've been watching my whole life.
No, it's shiny pussy.
Yes. I mean, so it's bald, right? Completely bald, like
right.
shiny,
yeah.
right?
It's basically saying kitty is standing for pussy in that.
Yes, of course.
Oh, sorry. I just thought you were like, what a cute name.
No. I knew it was Pretty Kitty because we was like, we're going to make your pussy shine. And I was like, I don't need it to shine. I'm famous enough. But I just kept staring at it going, maybe I should try it out, even though I have decided that I don't feel like bleeding from my vagina when I don't have to.
Yeah, I do understand all of this. I do enjoy a wax. I like the feel of a wax. I like the pain. It makes...
Hey.
No, I do. It makes me feel alive and ready to fight the patriarchy.
Truth nuggets.
I do. It's just like, and I'm like, yeah. It gives me an extra thing, and I do like the smoothness of
Fair
it.
enough.
I do enjoy it. But I had an idea. I had a name for a salon because once I might have told you this on the podcast before, but most of you won't have heard it. I accidentally once went for a wax drunk after our office Christmas lunch.
What?
Well,
how did you leave this lunch and go, you know what? This is all gotta go.
I did.
It hasn't been nearly enough time. Forget the schedule. It's gotta go now.
Well, it was one of those Christmas lunches, and then I had a Christmas party in the evening, and I just wanted, I wanted my legs waxed. I just wanted to feel sexy. So I was walking past a salon that I used to go. I was like, oh, I'll just pop in and get everything waxed.
Everything. Like dip. Neck down dip. In a vat.
I mean, the main areas and the main regions and nations and regions. And so I had a wax. I had a bikini wax and a lower leg wax, as I like to do. And I felt no pain at all because I was smashed. And I thought then, this is a fucking business opportunity for Dragon's Den.
Yes.
And I decided that what I wanted to start was a cocktail and waxing bar called Hair of the Dog.
Oh, shit. I'm definitely going to that, Deb.
Well, I know.
Oh, my God. I'm definitely going and getting my first wax there.
I told Catherine Ryan that, and she said it should be called Hair of the Puss. But I'm not sure. Hair of the Dog got a better reaction. I'll text Catherine and say, Catherine, this is the one time in my life I was funnier than you.
Also, yes. No, come on. There have been other times. But also, no shade. Everybody's funny in turns. Also, wouldn't it be great if, 90s Parker Posey could come out and be the person to bring you into the room and be like, okay, bitches, who's next up for their wax? Because it's Hair of the Dog, right?
Yes! Yeah. I think it would be cool. We could make it really funky and really like this really dark cocktail bar. And then you just, whenever you feel ready, whenever you feel numb, you just head off into a room and there's a lady. You just knock on a secret door and say, I'm ready. And then a little hand comes out and gives you a number, and then someone comes and taps you on the shoulder, takes you in. You don't even, you should, and I think this is clear, you should fill out the card as to what you want before you take a drink.
Yeah.
Because it will do piercings and tattoos as well. You need to be very clear, this is what I want. And then we do it when you're drunk, and then you wake up in the morning and go, oh.
That drunk. You get that drunk.
Yeah.
Is there a home delivery service after you're done?
Yeah. We taxi you home, and you wake up in the morning, and there was a note that says, that was a wonderful woman you married last night. Live from the London Podcast Festival, the Spontaneity Shop presents The Guilty Feminist with me, Deborah Francis White, guest stars Desiree Burch, and our very special guests, Matilda Mallinson, Helena Warrior, Susan Skedd, talking about protest, then and now. Hello, and welcome London Podcast Festival, one and all, to The Guilty Feminist. This is when lots of podcasts come out of the studios and the living rooms that they work in, and they play this space in King's Place. But we're here all the time. This is our local residency, and we are always a live podcast. Right from the first one, we've always had an audience. The only time we recorded in a living room was when we absolutely were forced to by the government. And a global... I don't know if you had this, but here at King's Place we had a global pandemic, and it was awful. And I absolutely hated it because I couldn't touch you or lick you. I'm not meant to lick you at all, but I could if I wanted, and you said yes, and that feels good. That feels important. That I'm in that proximity. I would never. I don't want to assume your gender, sir. Do I say sir? Yes. Okay. I would never, sir. I would never lick you without your express permission. And I would ask you 2 or 3 times, so I'd want to make sure. Okay. But it's nice to know I'm close enough physically and you're not on some kind of Zoom. I don't want to think I couldn't lick you even if you said yes. Do you see what I mean by that? And also, I don't want to think if I licked you, I'd give you something terrible. I still might. There's been a lot of COVID coming back. So actually, don't lick anyone that's not in your bubble. And by bubble, I do mean that's someone if you regularly lick them... You know, just give us a cheer if you're here with someone you regularly lick. Great, nice. I wasn't expecting... This is a total riff. I just need you to know. I wasn't expecting to say any of this, but it's now going to be my new favourite question to all and any audiences. Just give us a cheer if you're here with someone you lick. I mean, it's absolutely... Just cheer if you're here with someone who licks you. Fewer people, interesting. This is a one-way licking situation for most of you. Now, listen, feminists, if you're licking and you're not being licked, unless that's what you want, which is fine, I'm not lick-shaming anyone. It's been a big and busy week. I don't really know where I'm going with this, except to say somewhere absurd. I've been doing a play in Chichester. We just got our 4th 4-star review from the broadsheets this morning in the Sunday Times. I was really expecting it not to be a 4-star because it's Sunday Times, and that's the theatre critic there is Quentin Letts, and he hates anything even mildly progressive. What he would like to see is just, honestly, productions of The Sound of Music, but only with white people all the time. He'd like that in every single... And he doesn't even realise they're refugees at the end. That's the point of the fucking story. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand that. He doesn't understand that The Wizard of Oz is a story about a refugee of climate change. It doesn't. Most of our stories about refugees, if you look at them, they're nearly all about orphans or refugees. Look at them in the cold light of day, you will see that that's true. And the same people going, oh my God, what a sad movie at Christmas, are then going, what are those boats doing here? That is what is happening. And Quentin Letts is, how can I put this, a cunt. And, no, he is. And he body shames women, and he does all sorts of, he's horrible. He's really, really horrible. He's just the opposite values to anyone in here, and I can say that with I don't even know who you are, and I know that you hate everything about this man, even if you've never heard of him. I can guarantee you, if you've darkened this doorstep, if you've crossed this threshold, even if you were brought here by a friend and you don't even know what this show is, I'm telling you, you hate him. You hate him. So I was fully expecting a really nasty 2-star review this morning. And then do you know what dropped? Someone else fucking reviewed it. A woman person reviewed it and gave us 4 shiny stars and said lovely things. And then I found out he left the job a few weeks ago. He doesn't do it anymore. That's why I can safely call him a cunt all day long. Because, to be honest, I would anyway. I don't really want a good review from him. I'd be upset with myself. I think, well, if he likes it, I hate what I've just made. But yeah, it's just, sometimes you need a little bit of luck. And luck, I think, is the wind in the sails of hard work and, talent, those other things. And I feel like we're having a little bit of luck. So if anyone can get down to Chichester before the end of the month, it's on there, because it might not transfer, because then we're going to need more luck, because you need a theatre to be available and the cast to be available at the right time, and you need still a lot of stuff. At least we qualify now, and that's the main thing. So I've been doing that. And I've been, you know when you're working 24/7 on something, and then I sort of was whisked into King's Place, and I'm like, hello and welcome. And I started talking about licking people. That's the context, okay. So what I want to ask you now is this. Give us a cheer if you listen to the Guilty Feminist podcast. Give us a cheer if you don't know what you're at. You don't know, and you see those people seemed happy about it. They're like, yes! Why are you here? Were you just at the podcast festival, thought we'll give this one a go? Someone brought you? He brought you? Is it a date? It's not. It's friends. Okay. I'll tell you this, it isn't, because men often bring women to my show. If a man's brought the tickets, I'm always suspicious. It's usually a third date, and what they're trying to do is go, look, I'm a feminist. And also, this is. Look at how safe I am. A feminist, and this is funny and entertaining. What more could you ask for before you lick someone? I'm not saying that's the case here, so I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that. Is it though? Do you like her? No. Well, he's not saying no. Well, listen, thank you very much for bringing someone. I really appreciate that. Do you listen to the podcast yourself? Yeah. You do? Yeah. You won't be now. Okay, so I see that. Just lost a fan there. Lost a regular listener. Do you subscribe? Yes. Will you unsubscribe after the show? I'm kidding, sir. I'm kidding. I'm sure you have your own backstory that's nothing to do with me. What do you do for a living?
Sing in a choir.
You sing in a choir for a living? No. That's how you define... You sing in a choir and you make a living.
No, I'm retired.
You're retired and now you sing in a choir. What a lovely life. Everyone here wants your life. Just give us a cheer if you would like to give up working and sing in a choir. Everyone wants your life. Everyone wants to be you. What's your name?
David.
David, what's your choir?
It's called Real Voices.
Real Voices. Excellent. Is that like the Dove campaign for Real Beauty? Because I'll tell you something. Once, I said to my husband, I was looking at headshots. You know, you have to have, for comedy, you have to have new photos taken every again. And I showed him these headshots and I went, what do you think of that one? Do you think that looks a bit Dove campaign for Real Beauty? And he said, no, darling, you look lovely. And I thought, well, that campaign's failed. He knew what I meant. Well, listen, we'd love to hear your choir. Does it perform regularly in London?
Yeah, quite regularly.
Great. I'm going to look out for everyone look out for Real Voices. Go and cheer David. He's one of us. Just give us a cheer if you think you've got a feminist job. Or it doesn't have to be a job. You may not define yourself by your job. David doesn't define himself by his job. Feminist job or other thing that you do. Just give us a cheer. Excellent. Give us a cheer if you think you have an unfeminist job. Oh. Keen to know more. What's your unfeminist job? Civil servant. That's not necessarily unfeminist. That's not necessarily... What department are you in? Go on, tell us. The Home Office. Okay. All right, I was trying to save it. I said not necessarily, but as it turns out. Now, can I ask a question? Do you do stealth feminism in the Home Office? Do you ever do any Trojan horse feminism? Where you sneakily kind of go, well, that's not right. I'm gonna secretly write it. Do you ever do that? You try to, yeah. I find that nearly everyone in my audience who say they have an unfeminist job, it turns out, are doing feminist stuff inside. And so they are actually sometimes more feminist than the people with feminist jobs. Like a woman who said, oh, I just do money for rich people. I try and make more money for rich people. And I said, do you do any stealth feminism? She went, oh, yeah, all the time. I tell them to invest in things on the basis they'll make money, but they won't. They'll just help a feminist cause. And I said, are you embezzling? And she went, yeah, sometimes. But she said, not for myself, for feminist causes. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good with it. So actually, we could use you on the inside, if I'm honest. So maybe we should talk to you afterwards. Like, you will be fired within 6 months if you work with us, but I think it'll be worth it. You'll be a feminist legend and hero. You might do a small amount of jail time, but I think it'll be worth it for all of us. Are you down with that? You're down. Excellent. Anyone got a feminist job that they'd like to tell us about? 1, 2, 3. Yes, what's yours? You sell houseplants. Not on the face of it, feminist, but keep going. I believe in you. Female-led houseplants. Oh! She turned it round there, didn't she? If you're listening at home, she said only employing women from prison. It currently in prison or post? Both. Both. And so it's houseplants. I need some new plants, but I need them for the terrace because I went away to do this play to Chichester and my husband let all of my plants die. And I said, did you not water them at all? It was that very sunny period, to be fair. I said, did you not water them all? He said, it never occurred to me. Not once. But it's like the TV's there and you look out on the fucking plants, just watching them gasp for water. And he said, well, they should have been more vocal like the cats. That's the reason the cats aren't dead. Because they'll come up and go, meow, meow. And he was like, why don't plants do that? Good question, though. All right. If we could do anything to help your house... What's it called? The Glass House. If we could do anything to help you, please let us know. Tonight, I have a very special co-pilot that I haven't had on for a while, mostly because she's got too famous for me to have her. So put your hands together and make incredibly excited woohooing noises for the wonderful Desiree Burch! Yes.
Just hear me. Hi, this is better because it's a recorded medium, isn't it?
That's right.
This is how show business works.
It's all being recorded, so if you don't talk into the mic, they might hear you.
But no one else ever will. And sometime, ever. No, I'll scream into their phones. Don't worry. How y'all doing? It's wonderful to see you feminists here. It's lovely to be back in this beautiful space. It's so good that we're talking about progress. It's so good that we're together. I think we really need to be at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're listening at home, this is the day that the Russell Brand story has dropped. It hasn't dropped for us. We've known about it for years. We've been talking about it for years in comedy, haven't we?
Yeah. And it's funny how that happens until I got a lot of things in my feed that were all sort of like, oh, you comedians, why didn't you say anything before, la, la, la? Because the way that libel laws work in this country means you'd be sued out of existence if you did that, right?
God, yeah.
Like, my understanding is that the difference between Hannibal Buress and anybody in this country is that he has a freedom of speech to do that and not get sued because it's comedy, whereas here, people were afraid. I moved to this country and everybody's like, here's some old news, and then they updated me on everything that was going on, and I was like, thanks, welcome to Britain. But, you know, it's good to get that kind of information when you're coming into something because you might need it, right?
Yes, absolutely. But even so, Finn Taylor was doing material about it.
Yes, and
he got threatened to stop.
See?
And then, do you know what he did? So clever. He got threatened by Russell's people and told, you have to stop saying that. And so the next night, he went out and did his show again. It was a run of a show, and he went out and he went, so this is the bit where I normally talk about Russell Brand, but I've been threatened and I've been told I can't by his people. And so this bit, this is what I would say, but I can't say it. And he didn't say it, but he just told them, and he just did it flat, like, no, I think no jokes. He just went, and the audience were like, oh my God, what was it? And then he got an immediate phone call going, no, we don't want to stop your freedom of speech.
Please go back to the material, because people might think it's a joke at that point, as opposed to knowing it's true.
Exactly, and because as soon as you're threatened to close it down in that way, like, it's obvious. And also, we've just all known for years, guys. Like, we have all absolutely known. Everyone's talked about it for years.
Yes.
But he had so many, just like litigious lawyers around him. And also, for many years, he had the public on his side, he had the press on his side. And when I look back on it, this was all years before Me Too, or years before the current wave of feminism happened. You know, this is way back. There was no representation, there was no body positivity, there was no nothing positive. There was no sex positivity, there was no nothing.
Everyone was negative about everything. Why are you alive? Give us your money.
But certainly for women, because I don't know if you remember that story that broke that, it just happened. He and Jonathan Ross got on the radio and rang a young woman's grandfather.
Yes.
I'm deliberately not saying her name because I don't want her this was all coming back for her, I'm sure now. But then they got taken off the radio because he was going, oh, fuck your granddaughter. And that man was a very well-known actor. Yes. And you know what happened? Because it was all before this recent rise of feminism. she was massively slut-shamed.
Yeah.
And she was a burlesque dancer, and people went for her, and they shamed her body. They said, you took Russell Brand off our radio.
Thank God.
She didn't say a thing. She never said she slept with him. He did it to himself. And then ages later, when she was getting all of this harassment, she eventually said, okay, I need to tell my side of the story. And she did it once, and that was it. And any woman seeing that would go, oh my God, my life will be turned into completely my relationship with Russell Brand. So, of course, women were not coming out and talking about it. So, yeah, I will be very interested to see what happens from here on in. I haven't seen Dispatches yet, but
No, we're all too busy working, and also it's like, partially, why put yourself through what you already kind of know and have read and have discussed with other people? Do you gain very much by that, aside from making material out of it? And then there's a question about that as well.
I feel like I need to watch it just because I do The Guilty Feminist. I need to know what it is, so I actually will. But I also know that a lot of people are triggered by it and can't. And other people need, it's a catharsis. They need to see it. So I think whatever your relationship with it is, you go for that, whether it's holding back, watching it, sharing it, not sharing it. Do what you need to do at this time. But do you know what? When I got in a taxi to come here, and I was working on the show on the way, and the taxi driver said, oh, you're going to King's Place, are you a singer? And I said, no, I'm a comedian. And he went, tell me about Russell Brand.
Oh, now you want to hear about it.
Yeah, but he was like, tell me everything. And I said, oh, we've all talked about it for years.
Well, you say that everybody knew, but there are plenty of people who are not in this industry who did not know. There are plenty of people in America who I had to inform years ago, oh, no, you haven't heard about, they're the same people that I had to update on Morrissey and be like, I'm sorry, just listen to the Smiths and you got to stop. They just haven't, some news doesn't make it over, and so they're just like, what's wrong with Morrissey? And I'm like, girl, and the same with Russell Brand, like, girl, we cannot go to that show in LA, I'm telling you. So, yeah.
Certainly, I went into various charities and foundations and activist groups that I was working with here, and they had his picture on the wall.
Yeah.
Because he had done so much public activist stuff, but as many times people do, because they want to be seen in a certain light. And I was like, I'm going to go out on a large limb and say, you want to take that down now before it breaks. Because we all knew it would break at some point. And when I say everyone knew, I don't mean everybody. I mean people in comedy knew.
Yeah.
Female comics all knew. Male comics all knew. Every comic.
I feel like as consumers of comedy, though, we all need to do ourselves a favor, pull over to the side and reread Jekyll and Hyde, because it is about ego and shadow, and every time you see a comedian talking about some shit, it's based on real life. And so it's always disturbing when you look at someone like Brand or like Cosby or CK, whoever, and you're like, oh, they were talking about the thing they were doing, and we were like, ha ha ha. Huh? And that's not me saying go after every single comedian for every single joke, but usually the shadow has a way of bleeding into the ego, and the ego gets built and built and built, but it's built on top of this faulty foundation of what's underneath that thing. So listen carefully.
And I often think as well that, I think I wrote about this in my book about Louis C.K., is that he was a really good comedian, and then he did some very bad things, and people in the industry knew, and they sidelined the women, and they kept platforming him and giving him more budget. And I am not surprised he got better at that point. And people are like, oh my God, he's a genius. Because can you imagine, if you already have an ego and if you're already talented and you have a big ego, and then you full well know that the people in your industry know you're a predator, and they think that's a price worth paying to hear what you have to say. What kind of genius do you think you are now?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's part of the work. It's part of the reason they're good.
What couldn't you do if everybody knew your worst secret and was like, cool? What couldn't you do?
Exactly. And then we're like, it's worth it. Those women can be cannon fodder. It's fucking worth it to hear the gems out of your mouth when you stand up with a mic. You can hurt whoever you want. We just need it, baby. We need that sweet, sweet, funny philosophy that you deliver to us. We need your off-the-wall sitcom where you, again, hide in plain sight and show us some of the things that you do in a fucking weird way. And we all go, wow, it's so independent. Yeah. That's true. Anyway, so we need to, you can't do a feminist show without cathartically talking about Russell Brand at the top if the story is broken today. Sorry to start on such a kind of unfunny topic, but did everyone need to talk about it?
Yeah, were you all kind of going, at what point are they going to fucking talk about this thing?
Yeah. I didn't think the warm-up was the right
Yeah,
thing.
no.
I thought give some good vibes.
But we've
then,
got some like business to take care of later.
Business
There's
to
like
take care of.
progress happening later, so let's take care of this right now.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
We had to.
Yeah.
And we didn't even talk about doing it, but I was like, I know it's going to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
We were just like, we were just only a few seconds in the dressing room together.
Yeah,
we didn't even talk about it, but I was
us.
like, Russell Brand is a Predator, and he has now spent a few good years creating this whole the mainstream media is a lie like following, so that he can now go, that's why they're after me. And they will all support him to the hilt, no matter what what you could show actual video, and they would say it's a deep fake or something. They'd say she asked for it. Who knows what they'd say, but they would follow him to the hilt because he's a cult leader.
Yeah.
Right, we should start the show.
Yes.
Okay. This is The Guilty Feminist, the podcast in which we explore our noble goals as 21st century feminists and the hypocrisies and insecurities which undermine them. I'm Deborah Frances White. With me is Desiree Burch, and we are talking about protests then and now. I don't think that was well done. I'm Deborah Frances White, and with me is Desiree Burch, and we are talking about protests then and now. All right, are you ready for some stand-up comedy? Then please welcome to the stage my incredible co-pilot for this evening. It's the wonderful, the one and the only Desiree Burch!
I'm in stand-up mode now at this microphone. Hello, everybody. One of the things I probably should have said in there, too, and I considered it, but I was going to tell you here, is that I'm a feminist, but I hide behind the moniker of being a crazy cat lady now that I'm in my mid-40s and I have a cat that I adore. And the truth of the matter is I was crazy well before the cat. Like, I got the cat so that it made sense that I had been talking to myself for well over 30 years of my life at this point. Now, at least, there's a cat, right? And so the last time I was doing the show, I came to do it in crutches because I had a meniscus tear and a knee surgery. Some of you will remember that show. And at the time, I gave a lot of kudos to my boyfriend who took very excellent care of me. And I did not give a shout out to my cat, who I developed and deepened a relationship with during this time. Now, when I went to get the surgery, right, I was like very, very happy that I was like, look, at least I don't have any kids. This could all be made worse with kids. I think every experience in life could be made worse with kids. For me, I'm just like, thank God I don't let them come inside me, because the only thing that I don't need right now is some kid being like, Mommy, I'm hungry. Mommy, it's 4 a.m. Mommy, can you walk anymore? Mommy, like terrible things that come out of children's faces about when you're trying to be like, I'm a middle-aged person going through the aging process and I don't want to be seen right now. Thankfully, I only have the boyfriend and the cat. The boyfriend mostly sleeps through the night at this point, so I was only worried about the cat. I was worried about the cat. Specifically because, so we were talking earlier about the hair situation. I have a cat that's a fluff ball. She's basically a large ball of hair with a couple of teeth and some bones in there. And for those of you who have cats, give me a round of applause. So for those of you who have cats, you might know this situation. I have the kind of cat who does require a Brazilian. It'd be weird to leave one finger of hair out. A Hollywood. She needs well, look, I don't wax the entire cat. It's like mowing the lawn. Is that a Suburban? I don't know what we call that. But I do have a cat that needs to be regularly shaved because otherwise shit gets stuck to her butthole. Like, literally, if you let it go too long, she'll come running inside, and there's a catacomb of shit hanging like Lord Vecna between her two legs, quivering there. And what is it about cats? They only want to cuddle with you right after they've taken a dump. Have you ever noticed that about cats, cat owners? They the most affectionate time is right after they pinch one off. Like, the whole rest of the day, the cat's literally like, oh my God, I gotta hide from this bitch. All she wants to do is make biscuits all the fucking time. Like, I don't want to cuddle with her. Leave me the hell alone. And then literally the moment it's taking a shit, it comes into your room like, hey, you. We never talk anymore. Should we cuddle? Let's cuddle. Let's cuddle right in your bed. Let's just cuddle right in your bed. Let's just cuddle right in your bed. That's what cats love to do. And so I was like, you know what? I need to make sure to shave this cat before I go into the surgery time. It's 8 weeks where I'm not going to be able to chase her around. Now, normally, this is a thing that I could do, right? You know, and I tried doing it before. And what it requires, unfortunately, is like, you know, for those of you who have cats and have had to cut your cat's butthole hair, you understand this process. The way you do it is you start laying out little treats, you know, right in front of you, and then you've got to follow the cat around like a serial killer with some scissors behind their back, just slowly following them around, and then when they get lulled into a sense of security, you got to put your elbow down, all of them lift their tail up, Edward Scissorhand their butthole really, really quickly, and then let them forgive you, which could take days to weeks, okay? And so I choose seasonally to pay a very nice woman to come around and do this for me, because think about it. Anybody who has ever had an intimate wax or shave, think about if you went to Pretty Kitty, let's say, you're an esthetician, whoever you're going to, and what happened was they were laying out just tiny little Prosecco's in front of you on the floor, lulling you into a sense of security, you forgetting the entire time what happened, and then suddenly like, bam, 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 legs up in the air, rip, you like industrial-sized popsicle stick, covered in wax, rip to the sun, right? I mean, maybe it's a business idea. Maybe it's trauma. I don't know. So look, I pay another person to do this. What had happened was 2 days before the surgery when I got this done, the woman came over to do this, and instead of giving my cat a Brazilian or a Hollywood or a Suburban, she gave her the fuck the patriarchy, I read Naomi Klein. Like literally, there was more hair on her puss and butthole than there was before I gave her to the woman. I don't know how she managed to do it. It was like all of her hair had moved only to one spot. And I was like, are you serious? But I didn't have time to do anything about it. So I went in, I had the surgery, and I needed to tell you about that so I could tell you what happened next. Because we're 5 weeks into my recovery. I'm doing pretty well. I've gone over to my boyfriend's house at this point because he moved in for the first month, and then I moved over to his house for the second month, and he took care of me very nicely. It was the first day I'd gotten over there, and it was the first morning afterwards, and it happened to coincide with the 1 day a week he has to go into the office. So what that meant was I was woken up at 8 a.m., which is like a comedian 4 in the fucking morning, okay? And the reason is because my boyfriend, before we moved in together, clearly this guy had been burned by whoever he was in a relationship with before, because he decided to get the I give up on ever getting laid again double bed. No person who wants to sleep with another person should ever get a double bed. They are too small for 2023 sized people. Do you understand? Like, this is a modern era. Literally, to toss and turn in his bed, I have to do a press up and then turn. Like, seriously. And the thing is, he never cares, because in any relationship, there's one person who can never sleep and one person who hits the pillow being like, everything's great. I'm a straight white guy. I did great today. Conk shoe, conk shoe, conk shoe. He is out. I literally cannot watch a series with this man because the credits will roll and he will be flip top head, ZZZ, just snoring. And I have to explain every 10 minutes when he wakes up what happened on Succession. So I just don't watch shows with him anymore, right? So we've gotten to his double-sized, I've given up on getting laid fucking bed. He's laying there asleep. I'm going, this motherfucker, he's good thing he's taking care of me. And I'm tossing and turning in his bed until 4:30 in the morning. So when he wakes up at 8:30, I'm pissed the fuck off, right? But I'm like, Desiree, it's fine. You know what? You have all day, no day but today. You can wake up, you can meditate, because that's what I do in the mornings, and I'm not saying that to sound like I'm superior. I'm saying that because, you know, it's a practice I've taken up for the past couple of years during lockdown. Mostly I just sit there for 20 minutes of silence thinking of comebacks to shit people said to me in high school. I don't know when you get past that phase of meditation. I'm literally like, I will look this hoe up on LinkedIn and tell her this comeback, it's that good. This was going particularly well, right? I was sitting there, I was about 8 minutes in, and it was going really well. Like, you know, I could hear things in the distance, but I wasn't like on this one track focus of something. I had dropped into my body. I was feeling every sensation. I was like, this is gonna go well. And today, I'm gonna write the great American novel or whatever the fuck I'm gonna do. I'm gonna change the world, right? And I hear scratch, scratch, scratch. And I'm like, fuck, please don't be destroying his house. Like, we just got over here. She just found a patch of new carpet. She's going to dig a little hole in it. I know it. But I don't want to open my eyes and start screaming at her, because you don't want to reward that with attention, right? You want to ignore that, and then hopefully that behavior diminishes. But then I hear scratch, scratch, scratch. And I'm like, motherfucker, if you ruin this man's house, then you're going to ruin this entire relationship. Never mind that she was there before this person. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's the little entity I owe my allegiances to, but I'm still like, you're going to ruin this relationship. And then I'm like, Desiree, hold it together. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Finally, I go, Cisco, what the fuck? And as I'm saying that, I open my eyes. I land on her. She's not scratching the carpet. What she's doing is legs akimbo in the air, dragging her asshole across the carpet, making direct eye contact with me, right? She is disturbed. She's like, how come your grass doesn't work? It's not wiping away this terrible thing that I should have left in the bathroom. And I can't even walk, right? So I stand up on the little crutches, and I'm trying to stop her from doing it. And so that's just making her scoot. Right now she's doing like butthole parkour off the walls, and there's like a streak, there's like a whole scene of the crime that she's etched out of what's happened. Like, literally, I go back to the bathroom and I can see the whole CSI documentation of what's happened. Like, you know, she was in the litter tray. She tried the edge of the litter tray. That didn't work. She tried the bath mat, but the bath mat moved. Then she kind of made a U-turn and did like Tokyo drift into the bedroom. Like, this'll work. And then it was like scoot, scoot, scoot everywhere. Like, and so now that I'm chasing her around, being a terrible, terrible human being to this poor little creature that I've decided to take on and love, right? You know, I'm screaming at her, but not normal things that you should scream at a kid. Like, stop it, you stop that right now. No, not that. I'm screaming brutal existential things at my cat. Like, Cisco, I don't love you anymore. I used to before, but all love is conditional. And my conditions were you not shitting up the apartment we're staying in right now, Cisco. I can never trust you again, Cisco. You've made all my nightmares come true, Cisco. Like, this is what meditation can do for you if you only do it halfway, okay? Oh my goodness. And like, literally, I'm sitting there going, okay, how do I clean this up before he gets home? You know, just so he doesn't know that there's literally like poop on his bookshelf and like on the laptop, like little dairy milk buttons that she'd left around, right? And so the first thing I think is, let me go get some of the laundry soap. I pour Persil on it, not realizing it's the most concentrated substance. Like, it could clean up an entire oil spill, that stuff, right? I pour it on there, and then I'm rubbing it out, and little bubbles are coming up, and they're just like poo-flaked bubbles are coming up. And I'm like, this isn't working, and I don't know how I'm going to fix this, right? You know, so basically, you know, instead of doing what I should have done in that moment is realize, Desiree, the meditation's still going on. Are you going to make a choice to put more pain and suffering into the universe? Or, you know, are you going to laugh and take care of business? I learned a lesson for next time because I didn't do that. I screamed, yelled, cried, called a TaskRabbit, and some poor 19-year-old came over because somebody's got to have some kind of employment. And she did say that she was a cat lover. At least she used to be, probably before she came over to my boyfriend's house. But she did spend 3 hours like with a knife and a scraper getting all of this out of the carpet, off the window, like off of his books and everything else, right? And I just realized in that moment, like, look, if you have anybody that you have any kind of power over, if you have a cat, a dog, a young person, or whatever, you have the power. You are responsible for that power. You can never yell at a cat because you're always yelling at a cat for something that was your fucking fault in the first place, right? Like, the cat's scratching up your chaise longue, and you're like, stop doing that. And they're literally like, you trapped an apex predator in your home with designer furniture, and now you're mad at me? No, that was on you for deciding to do that. And I just thought it was a very illustrative story about what you should do with your power. And also, make sure to get your cat's ass shaved just for your own personal benefit, even if you don't do it for yourself. Like I said, I'm not into it, right? I'm the kind of person, I like a nice hedge here. I'm a lady with possessions. I want a hedge, like a bush, like not like a big bush, not like a George W. But like, you know, more like a Laura or a Kate Bush, like a small C conservative Bush. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's got some reactionary views, but it's not going to tank the economy and start a forever war. Do you know what I mean? Like, just a little something there, right? But cat, yoink, all gotta go. So I don't know. I really think you should start that business up because I'm starting to come around to this idea, Deb. I really, really am. Thank you guys so much for hearing my story. I appreciate it.
Desiree Burch, everybody! Are we ready for our guests? All right, so I already told you that today we're talking about protests, then and now. Feeling lately we do need some good protests. I mean, we're on the cusp of needing a good revolution, I think. Representing the then part of our show, our first guest is a historian specializing in 18th and 19th century girls' education. She's been collaborating with English Heritage and researching and commemorating the headquarters of the Women's Freedom League. Please welcome Susan Skedd. Thank you so much for joining us, Susan. Come take a seat here. And for the now part, please welcome the hosts of Media Storm, the award-winning news podcast that starts with the people who are normally asked last, Matilda Mallinson and Helena Wadia. Okay. So it's the now and it's the then. Susan, can you tell us a little bit about what you're here to talk about today?
Sure. I'm here to tell everyone about a wonderful plaque going up 2 days' time to a suffrage organisation that had its headquarters just off the Strand in London, the Women's Freedom League, which was all about getting the vote for women, but also that elusive thing, equality. And it had its home there between 1908 and 1913.
And it hasn't had a blue plaque yet. We're not allowed to say this until it comes out. So obviously the podcast is going to come out after the plaque is revealed. So if you could just keep...
Stop tweeting now.
Yeah, don't.
I'm looking at you.
Because genuinely, that will be very bad for Susan. And she said, if you do tweet about it or talk about it in the media or, online, apparently women will get no more plaques ever. So,
Yeah, they'll take women's plaques
they'll start taking
away.
them down. They'll be like, Emmeline Pankhurst lived here. No, she didn't. It's gone.
Do we have to say Xing as a verb instead of tweeting now?
No, don't do that.
Okay, all right. I don't want to acknowledge it, but I'm just like, is anybody saying I'm going to go X? Because that sounds more fun than it actually is, as we all know.
Nobody's going to say it. It's Twitter. Fuck Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I'm not playing into his hands. I mean, until it's just, apparently he wants to turn it into a massive marketplace and other things that aren't really Twitter. I don't care. I mean, the world's burning. Who's a fuck what Twitter's called? I hate him. I hate him and everything it stands for. So Susan,
that is accurate. I mean, that is women's freedom right there.
I'm so over him and it.
Deeply.
So, Susan, we should have had a plaque here before now, presumably, and we haven't. And so now is the time. So you're going to tell us more about that. Now, Media Storm, Tilda and Helena, you've broken a news story, which is really exciting. Can you tell us the top line of that?
So we have been investigating police recruitment. We've all been hearing that the police is institutionally racist, but owning the label doesn't go very far if we don't actually know what that means and do anything about it. So you may have been aware that Police Uplift was this scheme to recruit 20,000 new police officers in 3 years. Boris Johnson was very proud about it when he announced it just before the 2019 election. And we were told that this 20,000 recruitment would be a chance to diversify the police force. However, when it doesn't happen, we're told, but black people and ethnic minorities, they don't want to join the police. So that's why we're not getting a proportional representation. We asked the police forces to hand over the ethnicity breakdown of everyone who applied. And for the first time, we can prove that not only is that not true, but minority ethnics are more likely than white people to apply to the police at the moment. But they are being rejected at deeply discriminatory rates. So black people are 60% more likely to be rejected from joining police forces in the UK than white people.
60% more?
Yeah.
Mm. Wow, that's extraordinary. And the police have been saying, no, the reason we don't have a lot of black and brown people in the police force is black and brown people don't apply.
But true.
I mean, I'm certain that they've probably, everybody gotten some money to do some, recruitment schemes or something. Even if they haven't gotten money, they probably have been we want to encourage black and minority ethnic people to apply for these jobs. So they're basically being come. So we could be rejected, over and over again and be they just don't want to apply, They're just busy being on welfare, I guess, and addicted to to crack? I mean,
Yeah.
did I take it too far? Or is that just going on inside of their heads? Because, I mean, I assume if they're like, they just don't want to be police,
No,
even though
also-
they understand that the numbers reflect the exact opposite, that they're playing into stereotypes, right?
Exactly. And also, when we did a mini-series on this, and we did our first episode, and when our first episode came out, a lot of people on Twitter, or X, were like, oh, it's not racism, you know? Maybe the ethnic minorities are just not as good as the white people.
Oh, wow, they're not as good
Maybe
as
it's
tasing
not
people to
race-
death.
And I was like,
As the white people are who are in the police. They're not as good at rape and murder, are they, perhaps, as the Met Police? Sorry to bring it up, but it's still fucking true.
We're talking about it.
Yeah.
But also, it's like, that is a common refrain that we hear, not just in policing, right? Like, we hear, like, comedy panel shows are full of white male comedians, and then they're like, well, you know, maybe women just aren't funny. It's the same kind of narrative that we were seeing reflected back on us on social media when we put out this episode.
But also, do you get trained to be a police officer? Like, how do they know? Like, surely you take people into the training program. You don't just turn up and go, I'll be a police officer, please. And they go, oh, you look like you'd be good at it.
in your badge.
Yeah.
Have fun out there, kid.
It seems a lot like that is how it's done because the way the police behave. But I believe there's a training program. How could you possibly say Black and Asian people are not going to be as good at that? I don't
The
understand.
thing is, it wasn't just coming from comments. We actually had this response almost from one of the strategy leads for the Police Uplift program. At first, you know, when we asked for a response, not only did they deny to sit down for an interview, they said, oh, it's not our area. They actually tried to discredit our data. And I was like, well, this is your data.
No, sorry, we just have to pause a sec. The National Police Chiefs Council said this is not our area.
They were like, well, it wouldn't be
The
appropriate.
policing is
for
not
us
their
to-
area.
Their data isn't their area.
Eventually, they then did sit down with us, or we really harassed one of them individually on Twitter, on X, services purposes. And I was like, okay, look, we want to figure out where this disparity is coming from. You know, maybe let's give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you're not just being racist and like, oh, we don't want you. Is there a correlation to do with second languages? Or, you know, let's work it out. And she said, you know, the problem is that we don't have as many people coming forwards. And I said, oh, no. I don't know if you've been made aware of this, but our data shows you do have people from these communities coming forward. They're actually more likely to be coming forward. She goes, oh, no, my data doesn't show that. I was like, well, why would your data be different to my data? And she said, oh, because the data that we have comes after the basic eligibility checks. And I said, okay, so if ours comes before and yours comes after, doesn't that mean that that's one of the places where the problems are arising? So we were trying to diagnose it like this. And she said, oh, we did see some improvement during COVID when the face-to-face interviews stopped, you know, and we weren't able to do face-to-face interviews, and actually then some of that disparity shrunk. So then...
Oh, these people had ineligible faces.
Well, so then we said, okay, well, maybe that's proof that there's some bias of the people assessing. And she said, well, you know, we've tried to actually diversify the people doing the assessing. And the reason is, and she didn't say, oh, the reason is because they may have biases. The reason is because if a minority comes in and, you know, they're being interviewed by a white person, they might not perform as well because, you know, they're unset. So
like every person who's a minority hasn't been interviewed by a white person in order to get past some arbitrary gate that they're keeping. Yes.
So yeah, again, it's your fault.
Yes.
Good Lord. Okay, all right. Oh. This is absolutely fascinating. So to come back to you, Susan, can you tell us, so this is our history. So what Helena and Tilda are doing at the moment is sort of fighting a very specific fight by using the facts against the government who's provided the facts. Is this something that feminists of yore did?
I think that's a really good question, but I think it's complete exclusion we're talking from public life in the early 20th century. I mean, the question of whether women should get the vote had been debated in Parliament since the 1860s. 40 years on, what had happened? And of course that leads to Emmeline Pankhurst deciding, okay, direct action, that's the way to go. But even direct action didn't have any effect. So there were mass pickets of Parliament basically saying, come on, you chaps, what are you doing? We're not going away. There were scuffles, there were protests, there were all sorts. Then, of course, it escalated. But it was I think the desperation from the women who got involved was because they didn't care. They absolutely did not care. It didn't matter how many petitions, how many protests, how many, well, we'll see, maybe you might deserve it in a few years' time. It was no, no, no. And that meant, though, women had to be incredibly resourceful. The time when the WFL, Women's Freedom League, was set up, it was actually a breakaway movement from the Pankhurst's own organisation. Emmeline Pankhurst had many wonderful qualities, but she didn't like anyone being boss apart from her. And so WFL was a bit more, well, you know what, there's this thing called democracy. Possibly we could invite our members to share their views and take direct action in their own hands. So it's a complicated story, but funnily enough, women don't all think and act the same. That's what's wonderful. They're all personalities.
It's almost as if they're human.
Well, you might be on something there.
Yeah.
And they disagree and they fall out.
Yes.
Shocking. But it makes it complicated and quite exciting. But for the office that was set up in Robert Street, where the plaque will be, this is a period, not even the telephone was installed, but they had telegraphs. And everything had a code, so you could just send a telegram to the office. And their code was tactics. And I think that's brilliant because it suggests, okay, it's not working. Conventional routes are not working. We're excluded from public life. So what are we going to do?
What are our tactics?
And that included chaining themselves to the grille of the ladies' gallery in the House of Commons because women weren't allowed within the chamber, but were banished upstairs and were allowed to peer through. And there were various protests and things were thrown through, so they put a grille across. And so the women changed themselves to it. They had a barrage balloon and distributed lots of leaflets. Come on, they published a magazine. They had people selling it outside respectable places. Come on, chaps. But still, at its very height, before the First World War, the WFL only had 40,000 members. So it was a minority. And my question for everyone here is, what tactic would you have chosen to do, faced with that complete lack of power? Deborah?
So what would I do if I were a suffragette?
What would be your protest?
I think my best thing that I can do is to talk and to win arguments, to try and argue my way through. So I think I would have been part of the movement that had gone to have a series of meetings and lunches and tried to lure men off-site. That sounds wrong. Not like a honey trap, but I would have lured men off-site and sat with them, and I would have asked them a series of questions that painted them into a corner until I got them on my side. Now, meanwhile, there were other women doing, other things, but I sometimes think we should play to our talents and play to our skills, and I think no revolution has happened without some conversation, without some angry protests and riots, without some compromise, without some refusal to compromise. A revolution and a social movement has to have all of those ingredients. And I think where we sometimes fall down now is online there's an idea that your only tool can be anger and you mustn't use influence. And I'm like, no, we need that. And we need all of these other things. Mm. It's a paint box. And we need different people on different parts of that, breaking it through. You can't just use a sledgehammer. Yeah. It doesn't work like that. We've got to have conversations. We've got to have debates. We've got to have, if you're the one personally affected, you may not feel emotionally equipped to have to be at the front line of those debates. You may rather be in a different sort of position. But those who can, I believe, should. That's what I would do. Desiree, what would you do?
So if I'm understanding the sort of two sides of this, I mean, it's not two sides, it's a now and then. It sounds like, Susan, what you're saying is that, and I mean, it rings true from what we've all learned, that the tactics were quite sort of, there was no access to the information that we do have now to sort of undermine things. There was no sort of any other appeal besides the come on chaps, which is the sort of feels like the cul-de-sac of a lot of this, of being like, okay, we have to appeal to their logic and their sense of fairness and all of this, other stuff. And it's like, okay, how many different fronts, as Deborah was saying, can can we fight this on in terms of like galvanizing women beyond the 40,000 to become involved, whether that was reaching out to sex workers to be like, hey, every time you screw a guy, you got to talk about politics. We'll give you, we'll make sure, we'll make sure we pay you a little bit extra, or we'll do it, or something like that. Like, I mean, let's get the witches in the community working on some just every possible area, every possible
You're
way
so
you can
creative
build
with your activism.
Well, I just think, if I...
Only fans could be so much more powerful than it is.
Because there are so many
God.
levels in which men are interacting with women. And at every single turn, they should be facing some element of this. I mean, I think that during the civil rights era, Martin Luther King was very clear about, like, people who were famous and black. He was like, I don't need you to come to the March on Washington or to go across Selma and get killed. I need you to stay on TV. I need you to be on the radio or on the news or whatever. And we need these people doing these, like, every single crack we can get through. We have to kind of chip this iceberg apart from every angle. So I think that I would just be trying to reach out to the angles, to the people who weren't being initially reached out to, because, it wasn't, it was going to benefit married women, and it was a small section of women that first got the vote when they did finally get the vote, right? So just...
Well, yeah, and they disagreed as to which women should get the vote first. So you had some people wanting to say, no, all women, and all men above 21.
I mean, that's every movement, right? Like
where there was,
what's the front line?
as we all know, there was a property qualification when the vote came in 1918.
Yeah.
It was married women over 30 who owned property, or did you have to be married or own property?
You didn't have to be married, but there were loads of proposals.
But if your husband owned property and you were married, you could still get the vote.
Exactly.
So you had to own property.
Have property.
Yeah, to be rateable value of 5 shillings. So, not huge, but it's still very excluded. It was a huge step forward, but not far enough.
But then in 10 years' time, every woman over 21...
Did you know which organisation kept the fight going over that 10 years?
Was it, by any chance, the Women's Freedom
Defence League?
Congratulations. Yes, absolutely.
Can we come back now to you both? Because this is a current fight, that you've got on now. I need to know, what have the police said about this when they've been shown it? Where are you with this now?
Yeah, because it's not like people see facts and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know, you're right, let's fix it. Yeah. They just go, what facts? I have other facts, because facts are fun now. Yeah, subjective facts.
Alternative facts.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's quite amazing. The initial reaction, it's very defensive. You're prepared for this as a journalist. I mean, we have someone from the Home Office here. Try approaching the Home Office saying that they've done anything wrong. It's a knee-jerk reaction. And so first they tried to discredit the data.
Their data.
Which going well for how well they're monitoring.
They've tried to discredit their own data that they supplied to you. Fantastic.
That was resort number one. Tried that. Then we got a bit more press attention. We had The Guardian report on it. We had some regional papers report on their local police, data. And then they agreed to the interview. And then finally, after weeks of pushing, we have now been invited to a meeting with half a dozen of the chiefs and the strategy leads for the police uplift to go through the data and to tell them what they're doing wrong, because apparently they didn't know about it, because the data assessment that we did, they weren't doing within their own force, and actually getting that data, Helena can vouch, was really tricky because they store it in different formats. Some of them, they throw all BAME categories into one number, which isn't very helpful. And they weren't doing it.
Yeah, they were basically like, whoops, that wasn't us. And then they were like, okay, what can we do? We're sorry.
Really? So what are they going to do about it?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that at Mediason, we're really proud of the way that we do solutions-focused journalism. And what that means is that a lot of the time, journalists and the news, they report on necessary but very, sad and horrific things. And then they don't go a little one step further than that and say, well, what can we do about this? What can we do to fix it? And what happens is that then people, become very despondent. They feel very helpless. People say, oh, I don't watch the news because it affects my mental health, which is, completely legitimate, because a lot of the stuff out there is very, very horrible, and it's not something you want to consume in your day-to-day life. Which is why we try and point to solutions every time we do a bit of journalism, and also point to solutions ask for solutions from the people who have lived the actual story. Because so often what we do in journalism, what people do in journalism is they interview somebody, well, if they get around to interviewing somebody who's actually lived the story, they'll sort of like write a couple of lines on at the end. What we do is we say, no, you've lived it, you're an expert, so what do you think would fix this? And so we decided in this story to do some solutions-based journalism and to ask the people involved and who had lived experience of going through police vetting. I mean, we heard of one person who was actually rejected from police vetting because they had been themselves stopped and searched 3 times in 2 months. Now, I wonder why they were stopped and searched. They were black. They lived in a highly populated black area with a lot of police presence. So we all
Not black police as well.
Non-black police
Yes.
presence.
And they can't seem to find those anywhere.
They're not applying.
Yeah. So we sat down and we're like, okay, we'll draw up some solutions for you. And the question we were asking, it ties into the conversation we're just having. You know, can you achieve change through internal, incremental reform, through asking politely, or do you need to bring the system down?
Right.
And the positive action we were looking at is the schemes that they currently have. You know, we can hire recruitment specialists to guide minorities through the process, to inform them what the test will look like, because actually one problem is that people coming from minority communities into the police, they're less likely to know someone in the police who can mentor them and give them that counsel. However, we then sat down with someone who's actually been hired by the police to do this, to implement that positive action. And he said, I don't want to do it because it doesn't address the problem. I am being asked to help people play a broken system.
Yeah.
But the system is broken and the system needs to change. And then we looked at police forces that have actually started from scratch. And this exists in one case in Ontario in Canada, where they have what they call the kind of the tribal police. And it's where they have asked the Indigenous majority community to lay out the criteria they want. How do you want us to recruit officers? What are the values that matter to you when we're recruiting? And they have built the force from that. So much like what we do on the podcast, and we say, okay, it's lived experience where the expertise lies. The police need to go to the communities and ask them what they want from their police forces and build upward from that.
And here's the thing, because we had Leroy Logan on our podcast. He was a founding member of the Black Police Association, and he was one of the black police officers who gave testimony during the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. Amazing man. We had him on our podcast, and he was talking about how police should be community-led. Police should be working with the public. And it's turned around that they're not. And he said, because it attracts these testosterone-fueled, macho men. And I said to him, well, why does it attract those people? And he said, it's called white supremacy. If you can take somebody's liberty away because you've just had a bad day, that is an automatic attraction for white supremacists. And that's what we have to address. But from what we sort of figured out, there's only so far internal reform can go. Leroy Logan also said internal reform is only possible if you have the political will to go with it. Right. And he said we do not have the current political will to go with it.
Makes sense. So is there a value in getting more Black and Asian people and people of other ethnic minorities into the current system? Is that a fight worth having?
Maybe, but it's not just about getting them in. We've got to get them at senior levels, right? And so what you see is the discrepancy grows every level up you go.
Yeah.
So the decision makers are even less representative than the force. And those at the junior level are answering to people who don't really have any knowledge or compassion for their community. And so we have a higher attrition rate, a higher fallout rate for officers who are from minority communities, who are having to answer to, mostly white men in an institutionally raised force. They're leaving. And so it's not just about bringing them in. We need to promote them. We need to keep them.
Yeah. Do you worry that the people at the... Sorry, Desiree, you asked.
No. I just, is it not... are we not in a position where we have to kind of attack the iceberg from all sides in terms of, the expert that you had on your podcast is correct in saying that this is a system that upholds and enforces white supremacy, and what we want to do is dismantle that. But in order to do that, you do need to start coaching people on the test who are Black, minority, ethnic people to start to reach some of those senior levels, to be on the inside, to say, we can also report from the inside that this is also correct, and we would like to be serving our communities and not abusing, murdering, incarcerating, whatever our communities. Do you not need to do both of those things? Or not more than both, but at least those both things.
Yeah, and actually on the first podcast we ever did on policing, our guests were Leroy Logan and Chantel Lunn. And this was really interesting because they'd both gone into the police force as minorities. And Leroy had stuck it out, and he'd founded the Black Police Association, and he'd spent his entire life in policing, and now he speaks on it. He's actually been played by John Boyega in a movie about racism, in the police force. Chantel, she ultimately left after going through tribunal because of the racism and sexism that she experienced. She has become a local councillor in Merseyside, and she started the Black Lives Matter movement there. And so here you have two amazing ways of dealing with it, one trying to change it from the inside, one trying to change it from the outside.
And actually, Chantel also did say that she would not recommend any Black women to join the force because of what she'd been through, and she doesn't want anybody to go through the same thing.
Wow.
And the thing that worries me is that the head of the police force is ultimately the Home Secretary, and the last Home Secretary is Priti Patel. Yeah. Current Home Secretary is Suella Braverman.
Yes.
Both of those are brown women, and look at them.
I suspect we don't have too many kind of Sun, Daily Mail diehards in here. But have you seen the language that they use and Suella Braverman used about the police? Because while we're all sitting here saying, you're institutionally racist, Suella Braverman is saying woke police. The police is too woke. They need to stop being woke and start fighting crime.
Start going back to sleep and killing everyone. Don't be woke.
Fucking hell, man.
This isn't a priority.
She said that the police were too woke when they were at Pride or that kind of thing. It's just like you're focusing on...
Like there aren't gay police.
Right.
Yeah. But also, God, when you look at all the WhatsApps that have come out and the institutionalized, horrendous views, this really comes back to, Susan, the stranglehold really of power that has been in this country and other countries like it. I'm sure other people are listening around the world and going, yep, relatable content. The women that broke through, because we can always learn from movements that break through and got what they want, how did they break through this institutional bias? And also, they had to face the police a lot, the suffragettes, because they were often beaten by the police, arrested by the police, dragged away from things by the police. They had to deal with this a lot. Like, what can we learn from the Women's Freedom League and the other suffragettes?
I think it's the resourcefulness and just drawing on exactly what you were saying earlier, Deborah. Every form of protest. So there were plays, there was music, there was art, as well as the published word. Every form of creativity was used in order to promote the message that women deserve the vote. Historians of the movement will discuss for a long time as to what actually inched women towards that. That wonderful Shangri-La of, we've got a ballot box that we can use. Oh, by the way, the WFL did try and set alight a ballot box with a sort of chemical reaction. That's on them in jail. But some things worked better than others. On the whole, the WFL were very keen to avoid the real violence of the Pankhursts because they thought that would just breed negativity and actually whip up even more opposition to the movement. And it's really interesting that the passive non-resistance tended to be their path. But it was a tough one because faced with police brutality, as there was then, obviously the force feeding after the enactment of the Cat and Mouse Act, which meant, just horrendous violation of women in Holloway Prison and other jails. But what I think I learned from them and from having researched them is collective action. Partly because they were a democratic organisation, but they were also a national organisation. There was a really strong branch in Glasgow. So everything I'm saying about it was run from London, but it was to empower women across the country. And I think that's something that we still really need in our lives over 100 years on. And the fact they had so few formal tools. One of the other lovely things that you can say the WFL achieved was to encourage women to step into those male professions. So a blue plaque went up very recently to Helena Normanton. I don't know if there are any lawyers in the house, but she was the first female barrister to qualify in 1919, and she was WFL. So it's that, do you know what? We're going to have to play them at their own game. And we're going to make those
Use
strides.
the law, get into
exactly.
the door.
But it's a precarious route, and it probably wasn't the most glamorous route. But it's dogged determination.
Well, I kind of love how this is building on what you said earlier in terms of like, you know, you've got to get not only people on the inside, but you've got to get the larger political will of people behind this. But it's kind of like, how do you write like TV shows and books and plays and jokes and whatever about policing when like nobody wants to talk about it because it's so dire? You know, I mean, it's so, I'm not surprised to hear about, you know, it's white supremacy, you know, right, throughout. And it's, I don't know, it's just sort of nobody wants to keep hitting the same one note on the piano of like, it's white supremacy, stupid, about policing, whether it's in the UK or in the US, but we all collectively need to be feeding this. So the people who disagree with every single person in this room are still getting that information subtly through the programming that they're watching or stories that they're reading or jokes they're hearing or whatever. So how do we kind of like muster the political will?
General election? I don't know.
Yeah. We can hear much more about this on Media Storm. Can you tell us about the program you've made about this? Because there's so much more to it, and there's so much more in-depth journalism that you've done than you can tell us about today in one episode of our podcast. Can you tell us a little bit more about how we can find Media Storm and what we should expect to hear in those episodes if we go deeper?
Well, I think before we received all the detailed Freedom of Information requests back, we did an episode called Police Behind the PR Machine. And this was more of a focus on how policing and the media are intertwined and the ways that they are intertwined. So obviously we've had a lot of high-profile scandals. I mean, it doesn't really feel right to call them scandals, to be honest. They're so much worse than that. In the police, Wayne Couzens, David Carrick, etc. And often, in order to sort of save face, you'll see the highest police commissioner be rolled out on the TV on the BBC News at 10 to give a very structured, clinical, PR-approved statement about it. And what we actually wanted to find out was, what's happening within the forces? If you take off this top layer, what is actually the sentiment inside the forces? What's the difference between the high-level ranking people and the low-level ranking people? And does everybody feel this way? Does everyone think that there can be internal reform, that can be possible? And so that's what we were aiming to find out first. And then the detailed FOI data came back. And so we extended this part and created 3 more episodes.
Yeah, so if you went to Media Storm feed, which is wherever you get your podcasts, the 3 most recent episodes are a detailed breakdown of what did that data tell us, why is this happening, and what are the solutions? And this fits into a whole 3-season Media Storm podcast where we take the lived experience that is missing. We look at the news, we say, okay, if you ever read an article about channel migrants, have a look through it. Not a single quote will be from anyone who's ever had to cross a border for any reason other than going on holiday or work trip. And so that's the first rule of journalism just broken. And we bring in people to talk about what they know because of what they've lived.
It's literally the best appeal for listening to a podcast I've heard. You know what I mean? It's like everyone's got one, but this one is like all the stuff I want to hear from all the people I want to hear it from. Yeah.
So you should go to Media Storm, you should subscribe, you should tell your friends about it, because they're breaking stuff all the time and letting you hear from the people that are never asked. But this particular one, they've actually broken a story that's then ended up in the national media. And it's hard to know, in a way, why the more resourced news outlets have never looked at these stats. So I'm really glad that you have, and I'm really glad that the wider media is now reporting this story, but please go back to the source and subscribe to Media Storm and see what their other episodes are about as well, but particularly listen to this 3-episode special. Can I ask, is there anything you came to say that you didn't get to say, Tilda and Helena?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we would plug our live show, but we did that yesterday, so no.
It was great, by the way.
Great.
And Patreon, if you subscribe to us on Patreon, then you get access to the original data, as well as, extended cuts of interviews. So
Oh, really? You
that's
get
very
the
helpful to us.
data.
That's $5 or $10 spent a month.
Like you said, you're pressing the same key on the piano, trying to get people to pay attention to a topic. Well, okay, trying to get advertisers to sponsor discussions like that is pretty tricky too. So
Yeah, but if we all start listening to it, the advertisers will be like, also buy a mattress while you're here. Woke people love sleeping. It's ironic, but it works.
If you can chip in a little bit, what's the lowest Patreon you can give?
£3 a month.
I mean,
So
amazing.
if you can chip in
Worth
£3
it.
a month, they're just doing it really on their own. It's just 2 young women on their own trying to break news stories that aren't broken in a 24-hour news cycle when journalists are exhausted. Journalists are great. They're exhausted. They're reporting 24 hours. There's a lot of clickbait stories they're being asked to cover. And so doing that old-school investigative journalism, like, when they broke Watergate, those days, papers cost money. People advertised in papers, and therefore journalists were paid to go and do those things. That's getting harder and harder and harder. And of course, there are still brilliant newspapers that do it, but it is getting harder and harder and harder, and journalists are being paid less and less and less because of the internet and the way it all works. So if you could chuck in £3, if you used to go and pick up a newspaper and buy it, and now you don't, and you could throw them £3 a month, or even more if you have it, it would really, really help them to break more stories. Susan, what can we do? Is there anything you came to say that you didn't get to say?
Absolutely. English Heritage Blue Plaques do not happen on their own. They don't just sort of morph out of the air and land on a building. They are all proposed by members of the public. And anyone who with a passing interest in plaques may perhaps picked up that not so many women have got plaques.
I have noticed that once or twice.
And a huge effort by English Heritage, particularly since 2016, to get more nominations for women. Because people don't sit in a darkened room going through a dictionary and working out who would be interesting. It's genuinely born of people's passion. So members of the public just write in to English Heritage. 2 key criteria, if I can mention.
Yes.
The person has to be dead.
Disappointing.
No.
I was going to write in and say I lived there. I do a really good podcast, written a play now.
You should write that and then send it off right before you know you're going to die.
Yeah,
In the event of my death, mail this in.
Yeah, absolutely. If I die, guys, I want a full-on campaign. Hopefully I don't, but, I'd rather be alive than have a blue plaque, but,
Well, I mean,
one or the other.
We've touched on a few issues why reputations do change over time. And it's not just dead for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
That's
Are those the 2 criteria?
that's
Dead
actually
and
a
long
third
dead?
criteria.
What's the third one? Dead for 20 years?
Well, dead for 20 years because that does allow for skeletons to tumble out of closets and biographies to reappraise somebody. And once the plaque goes up, it's actually permanent. So you can't pull it off the building. It's set.
Can't be cancelled.
You cannot be
That's
cancelled.
what the 20 years are for.
Right?
Never heard that.
The cancel window.
And the other thing, because it's not just all about people, it's about the buildings they lived or worked in. So therefore, the building has to be the same that the person would recognise.
Right.
So
if the person comes back from the dead, they have to go, I went there.
Yeah.
They can't go,
And not like, they added an extension and...
They can't just go, I never went...
Okay.
But they can't go, I never went to this dry cleaners. It has to be like, well, it's still a house that they lived in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there like a criteria that they have to have achieved something, or could you just recommend, Margaret and Deborah?
Yes. They've achieved much. Let's be real, Bar.
These breasts once brushed past this Greg's.
I mean, there are more criteria. Yes, then they're compared, but those are the crucial things. But if you'd like to see more women's plaques or women with plaques, underrepresented groups, please write into English Heritage. Come forth with your ideas, because There are loads of hidden histories out there, and we just need to know more.
We need to do a Guilty Feminist one where we all get behind somebody. Given what Helena and Matilda have been talking about, I would like to find... I think there are so many amazing black women in this country in the war whose efforts they just get written out. And I've read about some of them. So I think maybe we should try and collectively choose one. Maybe, go on Twitter and... Instagram or write in to guiltyfeminist@gmail.com, and maybe we'll try and get behind somebody and see if we can do one. And once we've done that one, we might do another one.
Absolutely. Not limited to one.
Not limited to one, but I think it's good to get if you get enough people behind one, you've got more chance than everyone trying.
But it doesn't need a campaign.
It doesn't.
It really doesn't. It needs a simple old-fashioned application form.
You just put it in and you just go...
Yeah. But I mean, is there like a tombola? I'm sure they get a lot of application forms.
Yeah,
how do they then make the choice unless a bunch of people are like, choose this one?
It is a sifting, and it is looking at that elusive quality of significance and lasting significance. So is this going to mean something for people?
But can I just push back on that very slightly? Because recently I had a project about a black woman who in her time was more famous than her white female counterpart that everyone now can name. Won't say what it is at the moment, but when I talked to some production companies about making a TV show about her drama, they went, you really need, now for anything historical, you need IP, which means it needs to be an existing book or something already about her. And I said, do you understand it was just after the Black Lives Matter summer?
You need to write a book before you can write a TV show.
Right. Well, it was just after the Black Lives Matter came to a boiling point that summer. And I just said, do you understand, though, who the IP is currently about because of structural bias? So, there are loads of fucking books about Dickens that I can adapt. It's this existing IP that everyone knows. The whole point is no one knows who she is. The existing IP doesn't exist because of structural bias. And then I found those production companies started saying, oh, no, we didn't mean that. But still there is no TV show. So I'm just going out on a large limb, and I'm going to say we also, with blue plaques, we do need to say significance can be forgotten and recreated.
Absolutely. And it's constantly shifting.
Yeah.
And it's being reevaluated.
There's loads of ones with men I've never heard of. It just goes, oh, he was an architect or something. And I go, well, I've never heard of him.
Well, who has heard of them all? But it's whether they did something that is deemed worthy. And you
100%.
can't revisit those decisions.
Oh, no. I don't want those taken away. No. I'm not saying take them away. I'm just saying, is there a different criteria sometimes for women? Because there's loads of men and it just goes, oh, he invented a telescope, or he looked out his window once and said a funny thing. And... even there's one like Mozart came here for a year or something and he lived in a flat above a shop or something, and they're like, well, it was Mozart, wasn't it? And I'm like, is he in London? He popped over. He popped over on the Eurostar and he had a little drink.
He had a drink in this pub in a poo.
Yeah, seriously. Back here. So what was that?
Wolfgang Amadeus is your classic English.
Classic English. So listen, I don't want Mozart's plugged in. I'm being wry because I'm a comedian. I'm not mocking the whole situation. I'm just saying that significance is subjective.
Absolutely.
And I think we might need to go, look, here is why this is significant to us and why it should be more significant to people who can't remember this person.
That's why we need more history.
Yeah.
Always more history.
Okay, all right.
Speaks the historian. Just go to the English Heritage website.
English Heritage website.
Absolutely. There's all the information you need.
And if we want to see this new blue plaque, where do we go?
You go to Trafalgar Square, walk along the Strand, head south towards the river, Robert Street, and it's a fabulous 18th century building.
So we go down to Robert Street, and if you are in London or you're visiting London, and we want to go to Robert Street, where we commemorate the headquarters of the Women's Freedom League, where suffragettes really did their bit and really worked hard to get the vote. And the vote is the only way we have any legislation, protections or representation for women at all. It's not just about, we get to tick a box. It's we get laws to protect us and we get representation in Parliament. You have been listening to The Guilty Feminist with me, Deborah Francis-White, guest host Desiree Burch, and our very special guest, Susan Skedd, Matilda Ballantyne, Helena Wadia. Recording engineer was Chris Sharp. The Guilty Feminist being tuned and composed by Mark Hodge. Producer was Tom Salinsky from The Spontaneity Shop. Thanks to Rachel Craft, Martina Dicio, Zainab Mohammed, and everyone at the London Podcast Festival, as well as all of you for listening. For more information about this and other episodes, visit guiltyfeminist.com. to go to Robert Street and we want to see the English freedom. No, the women's.
Fuck! The Bentley.
We want to go celebrate the EDL on Robert Street, guys.
And let's just say it.
Let's all go as a group. We'll march there.
We want to see the Women's Freedom League. Oh God, now we've got to keep all of this in. Let's cut this out. I don't want all this in here. I don't want the EDL evoked in the podcast. Okay. Commemorating the headquarters. So we go down to Robert Street. And if you are in London, or you're visiting London.
The Guilty Feminist is provided exclusively from Acast. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.